On today's episode, we explain why there's no reason for the Cubs not to compete for a playoff spot in 2023. We grade Chris Morel and a whole lot more. That's on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Cubs. Here we go.
Locked On Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, welcome back to Locked On Cubs. Alongside Sam Olber, I'm Matt Cozy. Pleased to be with you for a Tuesday episode and pleased to have a conversation with you, the Cubs fan, as we are that as well. What's on your ceiling?
Sorry, a light bulb literally just went out as we started.
I see. I've enjoyed my lighting recently. I feel like it looks better. I've done nothing to my lighting. It looks okay to me.
You just made me laugh. God, let's get to the show.
Interesting. Please. So, Sam, the Astros and Phillies are headed to the World Series, and
yes,
specifically the two teams in the National League has really made me think over why there's zero excuse for the Cubs not to compete for the playoffs in 2023. I know there's this discussion of, hey, well, only a certain amount of teams get in, but I did my homework today. I got some numbers in front of me, but I want to approach this topic because the Phillies run really excites me, and I think the Cubs could do a lot of good in 2023. Obviously, that depends on what they do in the offseason, but really there's at this point not a speck of a reason why they can't win in 2023 and be right in that conversation, right?
Well, the one spec would be that their players don't play well because at the end of the day, Philadelphia is a perfect example of a team that really struggled through the regular season based on their standards and found a way to get in, even though it wasn't pretty, which included a sweep at the hands of the Cubs at Wrigley Field, and caught a little bit of a break with Helsley on the Cardinals, took advantage of it, got hot at the right time. And now you look at the roster and you see Harper, you see Schwarber, you see Bohm, you see Real Muto, you see Nola, you see Wheeler. Yeah. And, okay, yes, I fully agree with you. The Phillies are a great example of how important it is to just get into the playoffs. But the Phillies also have a very good roster, a deep roster, and they spent a lot of money on their roster. So the lesson is twofold. Yes,
okay.
You don't want to just be like, oh, we have to be the Astros or the Dodgers in order to compete, because that's not true, as we saw with the Braves last year, as we saw from the Nats in 2019. But you still need a really deep roster with stars to make a run like this in the playoffs, right? Because let's just use the two prior examples. I think the Braves, Matt, are the best example because the Braves were a case where you had Eddie Rosario, Jorge Soler, Jock Peterson, three sort of journeyman players get very hot at the right time, right? Yes, you had Freddie Freeman. Yes, you still had Albies. Fried was a beast. But that team, I actually think, is probably a better example than the Phillies, because when you look at the Phillies on paper, I mean, they're loaded, but they just didn't perform like it all season, right?
And late in the season.
Right. Exactly.
It was only a month ago, not even, that they got swept by the Cubs at Wrigley. That was in the last week of the year, literally.
Yeah, that was when people thought the Brewers were going to get in because of that.
That would have been the last series of the year.
We talked about it on our show. We're like, oh, no, it stinks we beat the Phillies because that might help the Brewers get in. And now the Phillies are going to be playing in the Fall Classic.
Yeah. Great.
But yes, to your point, I'm sorry I cut you off.
No, go. Keep going.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Sometimes, guys, it's hard because we're not in the same room. Yeah. And there's like it's hard to know when someone's finished with a thought. So I don't mean to interrupt. But yes, to your point, the Phillies are a great example of a team that it's like, hey, get into the dance and get hot. So why can't the Cubs do that? So to answer your question.
And so are the Padres.
Right.
89. So what's crazy with these teams is how good their first place winner was. Because the Padres won 89 games and finished 22 games out of first.
Right.
And the Phillies won 87 and finished 14 out, and we're in third place. Out of the 15 NL teams, there was 7 with a winning record. We all know the one team that didn't get in, and 6 get in the new format. There's opportunities here. It's a good percentage, and you need to spend the money on the right free agents, and you need to make good trades, right? But that might include more risk taking. If you can get a player of a Correa or Turner or Judge or somebody like that caliber, and they're saying, hey, I want X amount of years, you should probably consider that now. You're in that mode. Bryce Harper got a huge deal. I mean, he's been literally the poster boy since he was 16.
Right.
And it's quite a story in itself that he hit that home run last night. But, you need to make the right moves, and obviously spending points to that. Okay, so we could check that off. We need to keep an eye on manager David Ross. What's the coaching like? What's the instruction like? When we discuss improving around the margin, yes, it's the signings around the margins to eliminate the VRs, to eliminate the Simmons, but it is also about fielding. It's also about base running. Those are prime examples of around the margins. And then I think the prospects, the Cubs have a strong farm system. That's nothing to dismiss. It continues to hum along. You hope it continues to go strong. And then there's the possibility of even graduating a player or two or more during the 23 season. And it's exciting to think about where the Cubs are possibly headed. There was that second half success with the 39 wins to 31 losses, but the recipe is there. And if it doesn't happen, I'm going to be ready to call it a failure.
Yeah, as we've said on the show,
the effort of doing it.
Yeah, but even if the effort, I mean, as we said on the show numerous times, if they are not looking to acquire assets at the trade deadline to help the current big league team this upcoming year, then the season's a failure. That's how I judge it, because you never know where you finish. This upcoming end of July, early August, the Cubs should be looking to buy and looking to make a playoff run. Plain fact, simple. There's no excuse for it. Yes, you can make the case that better days are ahead because of where their system is at, like you're saying. But that doesn't mean you don't try your best now. I told you on the show, I think early on, I'll give him this year. This year I gave it to him, right? It's done. It's winning time now. Hashtag game on. You know what I mean? It's time now. And to your point, the Phillies and Padres did it with virtually no chance to win their own division. The Cubs don't have any super teams like that in their division.
Right.
It's not
Great
that
point.
It's not that team that uses that weird arch as a symbol for their city, and it's sure as heck not that team up north, and their football team continues to struggle.
Yeah, the Reds and Pirates lost over 100 games this year. They don't have the resources of the Cubs.
Don't say their team names on this program.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
But the other two teams at the top are they're in the conversation. They have been for a while now, but it's nothing that it's nothing that I sneeze at as a fan. And I know allergy season is still pretty strong, but
if you want to spend your New Year's Eve or your Halloween doing something crazy, take your dog for a walk around the block, and have some chili in Cincinnati. Go ahead, man.
Yeah, the division thing is actually bigger than I thought. That's a good addition to the checklist, because it's not ultra competitive like the Mets, the Braves, the Dodgers, even the Giants. Those are teams that kind of put some fear in you, and the teams in the Cubs division, as you rightly point out, doesn't do that. The other thing that I would want to ask you is in terms of just the NL, right? Because the Astros, it looks like, might be one of the best teams in the sport's history.
Okay.
When you look at the Padres and the Phillies, is there anything that you've seen from Bob Melvin or Rob Thompson or their coaching staffs that sticks out to you as we kind of look more heavily at David Ross?
Yeah, Bob Melvin blew the game yesterday.
Wow.
You don't pitch an elimination game, a win or go home game, without your best reliever getting a chance to pitch, especially when you're leading late. It's a 3-2 game. They're up one, excuse me, not 3-2, whatever the score was. Oh, I think it was 3-2. It was 3-2 late. Man on second, no outs. You spend all those assets to go get Josh Hader, who's been awesome in the playoffs. He's warming up. Bryce Harper's at the plate. Either you walk Harper, or, in my opinion, just like Madden did with Chapman in Game 5 at Wrigley. It's an elimination game. All hands on deck. Remember, he pitched like 2 2/3 that night or whatever.
Yes.
You get Hader in the game, and you worry about San Diego and San Diego. The fact that he wasn't in that game and they lost that game with him warming up in the bullpen is reprehensible managing.
Yeah, it was truly bizarre. Just put him in the game. And the Phillies are a wild case because, if you wanted to zoom in on specifics, we could. But the manager that started the year isn't the manager now.
Yeah,
and they made it to the World Series.
Right. And how much different stuff is he doing than Girardi? I don't know. I'm not a Phillies fan. Someone else that's more educated in that would have to tell me. But sometimes a new voice and, a little bit of a difference, helps.
Absolutely. And these two teams were close to the bottom and betting favorites for the World Series. And today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting football and the start of the new basketball season. Find all the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every game. And as always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in all your favorite games and events, including MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet online, where the game starts. And we start this segment with some grades on Chris Morel, versatile player for the Northsiders in the 2022 campaign. He was a under-the-radar player, especially in terms of the prospects list. He debuted this year, but there was really no anticipation or chatter that Morel would debut. And once he did in mid-May, he stayed up the rest of the season, which is somewhat impressive in and of itself, although the Cubs were obviously limited in talent this year. But Morel hit that pinch hit home run in his first major league at-bat against the Pirates. That was a very exciting moment. We talked about moments on Monday's episode. And, Morel finished with a slash line of 253. 235, 308, 433 with an OPS of 741. 16 home runs, 19 doubles, 4 triples, 47 runs batted in. And he was 10 for 17 in steals. Where did you want to start the Morel conversation? Because he was a surprise player for the team this year, but didn't necessarily see a lot of sustained success from him.
He's a very tricky one for me, Matt. I would say, in terms of a grade, the grading is so hard because it's based on expectations. I did not know Chris Morel before the season started. So to give him anything less than like a B, now that he feels like he's a part of the team, feels wrong. So I think I'm going to like a B minus. I'm going to give him a B minus. He has tons of upside. He has tons of tools. He could throw. He could he could play multiple positions. He has tons of power. But until he figures out offensively how to consistently put the ball in play, I don't think he's going to be a starter or a long-term asset for this team. I think that's the way to put it. But the fact that he's even on our radar and has a chance to compete for a spot next year, I think is really awesome.
Yeah, it is. And I had trouble grading him. I had a tougher time than I thought that I would evaluating. I considered in the high C range, right? C plus, but ultimately because he was a rookie and also some defensive prowess that he showed, which we'll get to in a minute, I'm going to give him a B- as well. So same grade as you. So I ended up being maybe a little bit of an easier grader here because even just the traditional slash line is not very good. But the way he produced, the way he showed some power, some extra base hit potential, plus speed, ended on the B-. I think the big thing for Morel for me is that he's a player highlighted by his athleticism and versatility. Um, Appeared in at least 13 games at 4 different positions, 13 at shortstop, 18 at third base, 33 at second, and 57 patrolling center field.
Right.
I think that versatility, Sam, could be valuable in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to be a part of the team. The question is how big of a part of the team is he going to be? He has the tools. So, like, the stuff that you can't teach, he has. Now it's just, can he take more pitches? Can he limit his strikeouts? Can he go to right field? Because too often towards the second half of the year, it's just like 4-pitch K, easy out. If he could hit 255, keep the on base solid with a slug over 450 or so, and play multiple positions, that's a hell of a utility player to have. And I think every team has some sort of super utility guy.
Is the jury still out on him being an everyday player, or have we determined that he's going to mostly come off the bench?
I would be surprised if he started on opening day. I would be
Okay.
surprised. I'd be surprised. The thing is he's not especially good at any one position. He's just decent at many of them.
Right. Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
So, he doesn't give you a ton of flexibility there.
Yeah, I think as of right now, I see him in the mix at third base, center field as well. I think it's good to have some variety. I think it wouldn't behoove the Cubs for him to start every day. That would mean that you probably didn't do enough over the next few months.
Right.
But there's clearly some value there. He's making the league minimum, so there's value in that aspect as well from a financial perspective. And he definitely had some exciting moments as well. So I'm really curious what 2023 has in store for Morel. I don't think that he's a leadoff hitter. He hit leadoff a ton last year. You wonder if that hampered him at all. But for him to be in the lower third of the lineup, especially with some stolen base potential, could be interesting. And the ability to go get a baseball in center is always valuable. And
he's got a chance to be a very, very good player. But the right now the what's the word I'm looking for? It's there's too many gaps. So like he could be a star, but he also could be unplayable. So he has to just tighten those things up, tighten out, be able to make throws to first from third base, cut down his swing and misses. And then we're talking about a guy, but he has to cut those down in order to get where he wants to be.
And third base, we were told, was his natural spot. But if you rank the 4 spots he played, that might be 4th. Was that interesting to see develop?
It's because everything that he does on the infield is unnatural. It's very robotic. It doesn't look smooth the way he throws it. You know what I mean? Yes, I'm surprised that that's his best position because it does look like his most unnatural position.
I think he needs to slow down a bit.
Yeah.
You want to go get the baseball, but you also need to gather yourself with the process of throwing across the diamond. I think he would really benefit from that. Anything else on Morel?
I just think Morel is a really good example of somebody where he's not in your plans when you're looking at your system going into last year, but for things to work out, for this to be a 5, 6, 7, 8 year run of greatness, you need unexpected contribution, and he looks like, and hopefully he turns into one of those guys.
A interesting comment from the Athletics' Keith Law on Cubs prospect Matt Mervis, and we break it down next. Welcome back into Locked On Cubs. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. If you haven't subscribed on YouTube, please do that. Also, give us a like, drop a comment. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your pods on the audio side. Matt Mervis this year across 3 levels hit 36 home runs, 119 runs batted in, and the stats just snowball from there. Also in the Arizona Fall League, which, as Keith Law will allude to here, is more heavy on offense. In 10 games so far, Mervis has 4 home runs and an OPS over 1,000, which is good just for the extra reps he's getting. But here's what he wrote recently about Mervis in his scouting report from the Fall League. He said, quote, "He's very strong, but does not have great bat speed. And even in the pitching light AFL, his difficulty with velocity middle in or just in showed up very quickly. When pitchers did come inside, even with just average fastballs, he couldn't do anything beyond popping them up. I could see a role for him as a platoon first baseman / designated hitter like Daniel Vogelbach, but not beyond that," end quote. I have some issues here with this, but I also want to break it down fairly. And what were your first impressions of that?
I'd like to hear yours.
Okay. Well, I noticed something about Mervis's swing, and just speaking with people recently after this comment about his swing and with baseball people that I trust, he is a little unorthodox through the zone.
Yeah.
I wonder if that causes him to be a little slow with his swing path through the zone.
Sure.
He's competitive in the zone, though. At AAA, he only struck out 10% of the time.
Right,
So
right.
that was great.
Right.
Keith Law brings up velo. Velo middle in. So velo middle in or just in, as he says. Well, middle in to me is over the white, first of all. In, he doesn't really get specific, because it'd be one thing if you said up and in.
Right.
It's like, okay, well, here we go again. Another hitter that can't hit high velo.
Boy, we've had a lot of those. Huh?
So the middle in comment is strange.
Wisdom would like a little word.
Bodie would like to get in line there.
Yeah, buy a ticket.
But I'm going to give, I'm going to give this scouting report a grain of salt. And the last line I think I could have done without, but Keith Law, I don't know his motivation, but maybe he's trying to strike up a conversation, because Daniel Vogelbach never had prolific numbers like this, never. And Vogelbach's a major league player. He has been for a few years.
Right. I don't.
Are you worried? Are you upset?
No,
Are you?
No, I don't. It's, I know this sounds like a cop-out, but like, if I'm going to lose sleep over what one guy said in mid-October about a guy we're hoping to get production of out of first base in late March, I'll come back to that when I see him hit. Right now, the guy's had a breakout season. He's the player of the year in the minor leagues. And he even said himself, okay, a light pitching AFL, whatever. It's like, let's see him go up against, that velocity. We haven't really seen it happen yet, so I'm not going to worry about it. I don't think Matt Mervis has to be great for the Cubs to be great. I'm sure that there's going to be a backup plan, and it might be in the shape of a Southsider, but it would be great if he is. And I don't know, Matt. I feel like it's just a little bit of a stretch. I'm on my worry list. That article probably falls between 108th and 110th.
No, I think that's very fair, and we'll continue to keep an eye on that. And I like the idea of a Mervis and Southside shape combo as well. And Jose Abreu, we could say his name. He's not from up north.
Right, he's not from up north. And speaking from up north, the Bears are going to be going out east here in about 3 hours time.
Well, they're there already, but yeah.
Right. But there's going to be kickoff as Bill Belichick will break George Halas's win record tonight against the Chicago Bears, who are 8.5 underdogs, courtesy of Bet Online. If this is okay, I'll let you do that.
Be sure to hit that subscribe button for Locked On Cubs on YouTube, and smash the like button on all your favorite Locked On Cubs content. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Remember, drop us a text this week, 312-834-4634. Oh, how about this? Any Eberflus quotes ahead of this ball game?
We're
We'll
going to see
pull
where
one out of the game. We'll pull one out of the game.
No. I got one right now. We're going to see where it goes.
Oh, no. Thanks for making Locked On Cubs your first listen every day. Now make your second the Locked On Sports Today podcast. Locked On Sports Today is our 22-minute recap of the previous night in sports. It features local experts on each of the big stories, as well as the take of the day from one of the Locked On hosts. A lot going on in sports right now. Locked On has you covered with every team possible. He's Sam Olber. I'm Matt Cozy. This is Locked On Cubs.